perform it with gesture. They wanted to say we're a silent generation, but we yell with our body, we can speak without words, and we can be very truthful, even if you force us to be quiet, to be mute. And I remember this performance, we were crying. They didn't have a lot of experience, they were 17 years old. But young generation, the first generation who grew up in free country, they performed something really new, and they taught teacher, and they were very, very truthful. And this search for truth, they were the best students that Stanislavski could imagine. I'm sorry, I know that I'm doing a lot of mistakes, but I hope you understand what I was talking about.
Thank you. I want to follow up on something you said. Yes, сначала по-русски спрашиваю. Вот этот разговор про правду, да, truth. И это то, что меня очень удивило 2 года назад, когда я вплотную столкнулся с современным московским театром. Вот это как бы вот то, что это не Врубаев это выражение придумал, да, но он употребляет это выражение все время, новая искренность. Меня, как человека моего поколения, и особенно человека из города, в котором я родился и был воспитан, меня у меня первая реакция на это, я отношусь к этому с большой осторожностью. Вот, потому что, я отношусь, в моем поколении ни слова в простоте. А вот это поколение, да, вот это правда, и вот это можно сказать, что думаешь напрямую, и это даже я как-то чувствую себя не очень комфортабельно об этом разговаривая, будучи тем, кто я есть. Вот про это очень интересно поговорить. Here's what I was trying to ask. Galina, the word that has been used quite a few times was truth, truthfulness, sincerity. And this new generation of Russian theater artists, people who are in their 30s and in their 20s, they don't, at least in my observation, they don't possess this sort of self-consciousness that people of my age and with my background have. And they're not afraid to, seemingly not afraid to fall into this kind of pathos, if you wish. Again, but like good pathos. There's even a technical, almost critical term that Russian theater critics are using, and some theater artists, and I heard it myself from Ivan Voropayev, the head of the Praktika Theater, and a very famous actor and playwright, the new sincerity. I'm very interested to know, why this kind of voice is so prevalent in Russian theater today. Well, let's just say it as it is. Let's just look things in the eye. Let's approach them directly. Let's speak truth. Let's be sincere, even at the risk of being kind of awkward and ridiculous.
Yeah, I do have a couple thoughts while you were talking, because it also scares me to some extent. Sincerity is scary, obviously. So when I do think part of that is explainable right away by, Russian playwrights had the same problem as any other playwrights coming out from under the totalitarian regime. You were learning this language of speaking in metaphors and speaking in the Aesopian language and sending those messages from behind the stage and not being straightforward. And then at the moment when you actually can't speak forward, you don't have a language for that. You don't know how to articulate it. You don't know how to talk. And that changes a lot of things. That changes playwriting language, that changes directing language, that changes acting language to some extent. If you go see doc theater, for example, that demands the new kind of acting. And I do think that part of that is just this. It's just how do we use how do we communicate the idea straightforwardly from the playwright to the audience? That includes many steps that actually sort of brings down the importance of interpretation by director and things like this. But I think this is one of the reasons, and I do think that the second reason, which is sort of the part of that, but it is the moral vacuum that happened. That sort of just like happened, right? It's not. We're not saying that the Soviet times were extremely moral, pretty immoral if you want, but immoral is different from amoral. You know, it's like you can be in opposition to the wrong moral, and then by this creating your own moral. And I do think that when we're talking about when we're talking about Lyubimov, we are talking about people who are creating their alternative morals to the state, to the morals of the state, right? And it feels like when we're getting to the 90s, we're getting into the moral gap, right? When nothing is moral, nothing is immoral. When there is no bad, not that there is not even good moral, but there is no bad moral either. So you don't have anything to oppose to, and then people start creating those paths for themselves, what to hold to. And I do see two sort of pretty clear paths from there on. And one is Verifyev's path, which is this playwright and actor and the head of the Practica Theater, who is trying to formulate. Basically, he's preaching from stage, right? He's like his plays are preaches, or turn into preaches at some point during the play. And I do think there is an alternative way if we're looking for the polar ideas, and the polar idea would be not as much as the theater, but partially it is in the theater as well. It's Vladimir Sorokin. It's one of the major writers of the last like whatever 3 decades, right? With something that I would call the dehumanization and excluding of the idea of moral from the text. When the piece of literature is not dealing with moral problems at all. It's dealing with other issues. So that's if you want some kind of a conflicting line, that's what I would propose.
Мне кажется, очень много сужать ни Сорокина, ни Вырыпаева не стоит, потому что они тренируют мозги и душу свою в разных направлениях. По-разному звучат песни со сцены, условно говоря, и у Серебренникова, и у Богомолова. Они все время разные, их нельзя сужать. Вот что я хотел.
I think that you should be careful about narrowing down, categorizing whether it's Veripаев or Sorokin, one way or the other, because it's that he thinks that this kind of the categorization is too strict.
It is too strict, for sure.
Yeah, but it's.
Что касается, извини, Миша, что касается Сорокина,
when it comes to Sorokin,
я лично перегрелся в театре, я больше в театре вроде бы не работаю.
I myself have overheated in theater. I'm overheated in theater. I don't really work in theater anymore.
После золотого века Таганки,
After Taganka's golden age,
мне было неинтересно, как актеру, у меня какие-то другие дела.
as an actor, I lost interest in theater, and I engaged myself in other things.
I was agreed to be with Sorokin to novels, который поставил вот Эдуард Бояков. Это тоже было открытие, политеатр.
Just a footnote, Vladimir Sorokin is Russia's leading novelist, and he's a highly idiosyncratic writer.
Это совсем другой Сорокин был.
But after just translating what
Обещал быстро переводить, Миша.
Я еще как бы примечание делал. Просто объяснить, that it is working on Sorokin's work that sort of raised my interest in theater again. Dealing with Sorokin's novels.
Да, это были две это был эксперимент,
It was an experiment,
более языковый, чем продуктивно-драматургический.
more of a linguistic experiment than a productive dramaturgical one.
Сорокин, два рассказа Сорокина, противоположных социально-исторических баз.
Two short stories by Sorokin were
Деревенская.
very opposite in their sort of social and historical basis. One was rural,
Русская деревня
Russian village,
и феномен Андрея Сахарова.
and
Создателя
and the phenomena of Andrei Sakharov, the creator of the hydrogen bomb.
И все это происходит за несколько дней до начала, 41 год, июнь.
And it takes place in June of 1941.
И, значит, и начало войны.
On the eve of the war.
Мораль великого физика-ядерщика
The moral makeup of the great nuclear physicist,
и абсолютная чистота деревенской, русской деревенской жизни.
and absolute, innocence of Russian rural life.
И все это как-то сошлось и очень красиво было сделано
And it all came together and was done very beautifully,
по форме.
in a formal
Вот я
sense.
только хочу сказать, что тут художники, и, конечно, это самое интересное, то, как русский театр играет формы. То, что было при Сталине, запрещено. Это было как будто бы идеологическая диверсия, когда было запрещено имя Мирхольда, когда уничтожали живых гениев русской поэзии и литературы, Мандельштам, Бабель и так далее, запрещали Пастернака там и прочее. Вот форма и поэзия, то, что, я не знаю, как это сказать, но сегодня оно очень сильно и нервно и множественно продуцируется на русской сцене. Разнообразие формы и поэтического.
The variety of form and advancing the form and poetry, that has always been key to Russian theater. One has to keep that in mind. And it is in the formal sense that exercise with Sorokin's text that he was describing was so important for him.
При мне Лёва Додин заболел Давидом Боровским.
And I do recall when Lev Dodin became sort of, sick with David Borovsky, the great Russian stenographer.
Вот здесь что-то происходит, какая-то инъекция
Some kind of injection of form is taking place. The form gets injected into content.
Станиславец, материалист.
Even though Dodin is a complete Stanislavski, follower and.
А потом они стали работать оперные спектакли, потом и то, что сегодня произошла революция в недрах Додина. Он сегодня новая страница у этого большого режиссера, и его знают уже во всем мире, и мне кажется, это замечательное соединение. Это
And he thinks that this was an arranged marriage, and that it is like the sort of Dodin's like expansion and explosion and growth as an artistic figure is largely thanks to that artistic collaboration between Dodin and Borovsky.
Наверное, нужно сказать то, что я могу сказать, что я видел, как Юрий Любимов, совершая свои опыты
when he was carrying out his experiments,
на живых, как есть биологи, которые без мышей, они
like
не могут
biologists,
двинуть вообще
do experimentation on mice.
Вот я одна из первых мышей.
And Benjamin is one of those early mice.
Я могу вам сказать, что мы учились друг у друга.
And I can tell you that we were, learning from one another.
И в литературе театральной стали путать любимого 90-х годов, когда был один из многих театров, и любимого, который создавал новую.
Yeah, and now we, as things stand now, the Lyubimov of 1990s, when he was one of the many, is now confused with Lyubimov of 1960s, when he was a true innovator and founder, and it was a tandem of Lyubimov and Borovsky in the 1960s.
И сегодняшние сценографы и России, и шире считают Боровского, наверное, и оба Юры с этим согласятся, и для Месхишвили, скажем, для всех. Это феномен мировой сценографии.
And Borovsky is certainly a phenomenon of world scenography, and today's artists, and he's addressing the two directors on the panel, do consider Borovsky to be the founder of the trade I belong to as we know it today.
Тогда я могу скромно перечислить то новое, что открыл Любимов, что сегодня будет звучать наивно.
He can modestly list or enumerate what Lyubimov discovered and what's going to sound naive today. Might sound.
Например, отменил занавес вообще.
Will abolish the main drape.
Актеры не имели права гримироваться.
Abolished makeup. Actors could not use makeup.
Why? Он говорил, что живая краска на искреннем лице дороже, чем на
because he said, quote, the real color on a sincere face is much more dear than the painted one.
Соавторство.
Co-authorship, collaboration in theater.
Актер должен, зритель должен поверить, что этот актер может сам сочинить, может быть сочинителем того, что он произносит.
The audience member has to believe that the actor could have come up with what he is delivering from stage.
Однажды заболел актер, вместо того, чтобы отменить спектакль, Любимов предложил зрителям или заплатить им, вернуть деньги, или они останутся и посмотрят, как актеры исполняют свое.
Once the actor got sick, and Lyubimov, offered to the audience, instead of giving them their money back, just stay in the theater and see actors perform their own material.
Да, это пел Владимир Высоцкий, исполнял свои песни.
So Vladimir Vysotsky, an actor and Russia's greatest singer-songwriter, was singing his songs.
Поэт, прежде всего.
And poet, yeah.
Леонид Филатов пародии.
Leonid Filatov was doing parody material.
Пантомима.
Yeah, so they all were doing their own material. Nothing to do with the play.
И я читал Маяковского.
And Benjamin was reciting poems by Mayakovsky.
Так. И в этом театре рядом с Любимовым были актеры, драматурги, актеры-поэты, актеры-певцы, актеры-пантомимисты, актеры-режиссеры. Через черточку оказалось нечаянно, почему-то именно в этом театре.
So it just so happened, he thinks it was accidental, that in that particular company, none of the actors were just actors. They were all actors dash somethings. Actors, singers, songwriters, actors, pantomime artists, whatever. They all had something next to that dash.
Когда он уговорил Давида Боровского из Киева приехать и остаться при театре, Боровский сказал, что он остался, потому что ему показалось, что в этом театре есть все, кроме театральных интриг.
And when he finally managed to convince David Borovsky to move from Kiev to Moscow and stay for good, Borovsky later claimed that he felt like that theater, Taganka, had everything except for theatrical intrigues.
И все, что делает Любимов, является в сабтексте откликом на то, что происходит в жизни страны. Что бы ни стояло, Тартюф или Гамлет.
Yeah, and everything Lyubimov has ever directed was always in subtext in response to what was going on outside in the country in general.
Это, наверное, тема, заслуживающая разговора, о том, что такое сабтекст в русском театре.
And this might be a theme that deserves a separate conversation, subtext in the Russian theater. That's a graduate center. Thank you. I'd like to open the floor to questions. Я хочу.
Да, я понял.
So please, and, you know, go ahead, Annie. Okay, do you?
We have good
Okay,
obstacles.
what is creating subtext for modern theater, today theater, especially during the last 2 years?
What is creating? What,
This subtext that we're talking about, the subtext that creates Russian theater and influences. So what is the subtext right now?
you
Хотите,
go
я
ahead and
просто
briefly answer.
попробую? Да? Хотите, я пойду в русский язык, а вы на английский выше пойдете. Я буду переводить то, что...
Ну-ка, Миша, давай.
Сходи.
You're confusing.
Сходи налево и направо.
Нет, я перевожу на русский, а вы переводите на английский.
Sure.
Да?
So Yuri is going to translate into Russian, and I will be translating into
То
English.
есть, если подтекст создает театр русский, какой именно подтекст создает русский театр последние 2 года? В последнее время и особенно последние 2 года.
Я политикой не интересуюсь.
He's not interested in
I,
politics.
yeah, and I maybe I can try to answer. The subtext, it's what died during last 10 years approximately, because that was what Misha said, that people started to speak without question, what do you mean? I said what I mean. The direct conversation. That was something new that came to Russian mentality and Russian theater. And I would say that today nobody works with subtext because we still have political theater, like theater dog. They're doing what they want. They do against Putin. They do very open performances. They're closed. They found another place. They rent new place and then performed. Then they closed again. They moved to another place. And personally, we gave money them to survive. So they collected money on their platform. In other theaters like Veripaayev, they try to work on this new sincerity. And when you sincere, you don't need subtext. You say what you want. So I would say that till now, subtext, it's not the strongest point. That would be my answer. Maybe I'm wrong.
Надо еще иметь в виду, что отсутствует цензура официально.
Yeah.
Like I made a comment that this is a very Petersburg question, and there is no. Veniamin just made a point that there is no official censorship.
Я офицер.
But at the same time, you remember this story with Kapitalina Kakshenova, who is now one of the members of the jury of the Golden Mask, who wanted to. I think they closed this production about this little pillow made of buckwheat, because there was a little boy who was not able to deal with the regular down pillow, and he needed a buckwheat pillow, and Kapitalina Kakshenova wrote an article, and they closed this production because she said, this young boy, he needs a non-traditional friend. And you remember, non-traditionally oriented friend.
Что этому мальчику,
Нетрадиционная
то, о чем
ориентация.
речь, что в подтексте этого спектакля, что этому мальчику нужен нетрадиционный друг, необычная подушка, а коричневая.
То есть все равно же влияет.
So you're saying that as far as Kapitalina Kakshenova is concerned, there is
There is
subtext.
censorship.
Yeah, sure. No, and there is subtext.
No, there is no censorship, but people started to afraid
Yeah.
But you know, at the same time, if you free enough to say what you want, you can still say it. And there are
But
theaters.
sometimes not on stage, right?
Say it again.
Not on stage.
Not on stage. Theater
Не на
dogs
сцене.
say what they want,
Ну, они...
but that depends if you.
No.
Just for the for mostly American audience, just to make sure when we say dog theater and why it's so different from every other theater, actually including practical theaters, because dog theater lives on its own money,
Yeah.
right? And 90 whatever, 9 point whatever theaters in Russia do survive, but do survive with the support of the state, of the federal government, of the city government, of the government of what they call oblast, the region, right? So when we're speaking censorship, we're talking about, formally speaking, the hand which is giving money, and then often starts to demand the return.
Yeah, because if state is a producer, they can force you to do what you want. In theater dog, since they collect like public radio, they're collecting money from public, they are allowed to do what they want. It's question on who paid you to do your work.
But there is also some kind of inner censorship,
Но есть также и самоцензура, внутренняя
which
цензура.
actually also was influenced, I just remembered this example with the production of Nabokov's Lolita in Petersburg.
Я вспоминаю пример спектакля «Лолиты» по
That
Набокову,
was closed because Cossacks came.
который был закрыт, потому
And
что
the
пришли
director
казаки.
and Leonid Mozgovой, the artist, he
И
just
режиссер
said, okay, we're not playing
Леонид
this.
Мозговой сказал, нет, значит, мы
We're
не
not
играем.
playing this show.
Мы не играем этот спектакль.
So there is censorship. And this
То есть
was,
цензура
it was
присутствует.
kind of inner censorship.
И это была
because the
самоцензура и
person was
внутренняя
afraid.
цензура. Просто потому, что человек испугался.
Знаете что, я поставил, наверное, 6 или 7 спектаклей в Америке, в университетах. В том числе и Бабеля, и Гоголя, и Эрдмана.
I've directed 6 or 7 productions in the United States, mostly at universities, and I've directed pieces by Babel and Gogol and Erdmann.
И мне было трудно привыкнуть к тем ограничениям, о которых мне каждый раз говорили, что в Америке этого нельзя, что за это может пострадать, вас в следующий раз не пригласят.
And I had hard
Мой
time.
сабтекст понятен?
Yeah, sure. And I myself had hard time getting used to restrictions that would encounter every time. That you're allowed this and you're not allowed that, and and you won't be asked back if you do this or not.
И когда однажды я поставил в хорошем театре Looking Glass in Chicago, first of all, Master and Marguerite, we were consultants, Galina and me, and our Pontius Pilatus was David Schwimmer, yeah, and very good company. It's
Let me translate.
students from South.
Yeah, Northwest.
Yeah. I once directed, an actor's consultant with, myself and Nicolino in a production of Master and Margarita, Looking Glass in Chicago, and David Schwimmer was the protagonist in that.
И на следующий год ребята захотели со мной работать, и я поставил «Голову короля» Шварца.
And next year, those fellows wanted to work with me, and I directed the Nude King by Evgeny Schwartz.
Naked King, yeah. И Looking Glass, я влюбился в них, как будто бы это молодая таганка. Вот так они
And I fell in love with Looking Glass because I perceived them as a young Taganka.
Они умели все.
They could do anything.
И когда спектакль вышел, было с их точки зрения слишком много народа в зале, такого никогда не было.
And when the show opened, there were from their standpoint, there were too many people
Но
attending.
мы с Галиной знали секрет, потому что половина зала это были из дивана, из района, как Брайтон-Бич.
Oh, but Galina and I knew the secret because the half of the audience was from
Иммигрантская
from the
область.
immigrant, Chicago immigrant neighborhood.
Yeah. Да, и это был праздник премьеры, и все, мы улетали из Америки и прочитали в самолете, Галя прочитала ужасные слова про этот спектакль в Chicago Tribune.
And we were, while we were leaving, we were already in the plane. We read the horrid review in Chicago Tribune on the plane.
Главная мысль
main idea
главного
was
театроведа была, что второй год подряд русская драматургия, что молодой театр увлекся. В общем, это нехорошо.
Yeah, the main point of the reviewer was that the young company is doing Russian play for a second year in a row, and that's unbecoming.
I don't know what is it. Censorship, inside
what do you call it, censorship? What do you call it, inside censorship?
Или политика.
Or politics.
Let's ask Howard how he looks at the idea of censorship in the United States.
The big censorship we face in the United States is the censorship of the marketplace. So it's capitalism's version of censorship, and critics, the critics are a part of that. They're a part of forming the opinions and response of the audience and success of the production. So I think both systems have their strengths and weaknesses. What's really impressed me, I think, in the theater that I've seen in Russia, and I would say equally the work that I've seen over the last 6 or 7 years in Hungary and maybe Poland, other former communist countries, is honestly how more wide-ranging and experimental the work is. So one would imagine that a regime that has had a lot of support from the government can, under Stalin, force everybody to do all the same thing. But then there are periods where they can actually enable people to do more variety of experiments, more innovative work, more provocative work, and you're seeing, and I hope that doesn't all close down now in the new period where you have a lot of funding being taken away from some companies, as you described, because of the stance of the Putin government now. But what I've seen over the past 6 or 7 years is that the work is more risk-taking than American work, despite the fact that it has mostly support from the government. That's my opinion. So you can make your own judgment about which form of censorship is more severe.
I think we also were talking at some point about the difference between what is the bigger risk, to take the topic that is risky, or to put it or to build it in the theatrical form that will be less understandable for the audience. And I think every person who I was talking to in the American theater were agreeing that the aesthetical risks are actually higher.
Yes.
It's not about what you are talking; it's about how you are talking. That's even a bigger risk.
Well, and even just listening to this conversation, I mean, you can hear so much aesthetic consciousness and language, and that's part of what an audience member in Eastern Europe and in Russia is going to the theater to see, and has a language to talk about. American audiences don't have a language for talking about aesthetics. They have a language for talking about story. What was the story? What was the topic? What is it about? And I think that is one of our challenges at Woolley as a theater that's always trying to push the envelope, both in terms of what kinds of stories we put out there and in terms of what kinds of aesthetic approaches we take. I mean, my experience of theater history is when people want to say new things, they find new ways to say it. So, there's a link between aesthetics and content, but I think that one sees that link more obviously in Russian theater history than in American theater history. But I mean, that would be another graduate seminar to see how that has played out in the United States, because we've had our own series of different responses to Stanislavski, who of course, touched base in the United States in the teens and 19-teens and 20s, and had this huge influence on the group theater. And a lot of the great teachers of the 20th century considered themselves disciples of Stanislavski, as much in the United States as in as in Russia. So that's a whole other course.
Since film is is closer to me than theater, I would like to remind you about great 1920s, about Eisenstein, Pudovkin, Dziga Vertov. All they were state-sponsored. So in 1920s, the early Soviet Union were able to sponsor the most avant-garde films. At the same time, statistically, we know that general public did not understand these films, and they prefer the melodrama, Old Women from Ryazan, where the father-in-law seduced his daughter-in-law and she delivered the child. General public went to see this performance, not Baklisha Potemkin. But for about 5-6 years, the state subsidized avant-garde research. At the same time, started from 1930s, the Stalin's government became suspicious, not in content but in form. They realized that it's so easy to control content, but you couldn't control form. So they just started to fight with formalism. And form was nearly dead for 20 years. If you see performances of 1930s or 1950s, they were made in the same style, with just different level of pathos. What is good about today, that we have some very educated new Russians, new rich, and some of them started to sponsor theaters. For example, the Serebrennikov sponsored by Bosco, the company that owns GUM, the great department store on the Red Square. And so I don't know the debate state bank, but Bosco is private company. We have a complicated and interesting situation, because we have the public subsidized theaters as Theater Doc and some other small theaters. We have very good private theater, Zhenovach, the student of ST Studio of Dramatic Art, the theater that opened on private money, the building bought by private person, the building, the former Stanislavski family factory. It's one of the great theater in Moscow. The director Zhenovach is student of Pyotr Fomenko. And we have some state theaters like Gogol Center, but when they found themselves in the depth, financial depth, because they need to reconstruct and they overspend, the private money, private companies started to invest to help them to be out of financial crisis. So it is complicated, but immediately I recall the Tarkovsky problem. He had fight with censorship all his life when he lived in Russia. When he immigrated and found himself in Italy and then in Scandinavia, he started to speak about terrible censorship of money. And at the very last years of his life, he says he doesn't know what is more dangerous. So we need to say that artist, painter can be free, and writer can be free, but for theater people as well as for film people, it's a little bit hard to be free. We depend on money, and money, if state give money, state has rights to order. I'm sorry to say it.
Just one more, I know you're trying to wind up, one more tiny point about this, about these different systems, is that an obvious point is that in the United States, we generally make a show in a very short period of time. And it's because we're so dependent on the marketplace, and the marketplace is really not supporting theater at the high level that I think it deserves. And so a typical rehearsal period for an American show is, 3 to 4 weeks. It's shocking. And that forces us back onto a reliance on the script and the playwright. And the main commodity that we create in the United States is the script that then gets sent out to other theaters around the country. The main commodity that gets created in Europe is the production. Which is driven by a director and that director's vision, and then that production goes to festivals. It stays in the repertory for many, many years. So this is just a very, very big difference. And the investment in the creating of that production, it's not that their rehearsal periods are like thousands of hours long compared to ours. It's that they stretch out over a much longer period of time, and they're often created, at least they were, I think again this may be breaking down, but they're often created in the context of an ongoing company of artists who can sit down and have a reading anytime of a play they want to think about or make, or can engage with a writer, or can devise a work on their own, and then they can work on it for a couple of weeks and set it aside and then come back to it. So the process of thinking about and developing a production can take many, many months, whereas in the United States that's relatively rare. So that's a big factor that I think contributes to just what I think is just the sheer quality of the work in Russia and Eastern Europe, because they spend more time making it.
Years.
Yeah, can be years, and then
years.
and then some of them famous productions can stay in the repertory for years.
Yep.
I've seen things, we've all seen things that have been in the repertory for 20 years or more.
And actually get the productions are, the lifetimes of those productions are actually exceed life, careers of actors. And actors get sort of cycled through. Like Brothers and Sisters, Братья и сестры, famous production by Dudin at Mali Dramatičny Theater, just got sort of
Second reincarnation.
Yeah, just got reissued essentially with another generation of actors. I just want to give people a chance to ask some more questions.
I was wondering if the panel could comment on trends in Anglophone interpretations of Russian theater, and there are some different things going on. I think we certainly have the work that Howard and others are doing at Uli, where we sort of do a riff on Smekhov, and then the theater community, we just lost Brian Friel earlier this month, and certainly his translations are of Turgenev novels and other literature are the versions that we see done on American, Irish, English stages. And then the Sydney Theatre Company's Uncle Vanya, certainly I feel like was a very high-profile example of a contemporary Anglophone version of Russian theater. So I'm curious.
But directed by a Hungarian.
Thank you, and
Yeah.
translated, right, by a Hungarian?
I don't know the translation.
I think.
So.
And so I was curious if those productions or those movements are at all going, what the Russian theater community thinks of those, and then are there any reciprocal influences that those productions have reflecting back on Russian theater?
I would ask members of actual Russian theater community to answer this question. I have opinions on this, but I'd rather have.
Юр, начните. Я думаю, вот что-то
Ну,
такое.
yeah, I'll just. Well, it is my personal preference not to divide the world any more than it already is. I can tell you that I come across this notion that every culture knows how to direct or how to produce or how to think about their own writers better than anybody else. And time again, I saw examples of quite the opposite. The best Cherry Orchard I've seen in my life was directed by Giorgio Strehler in Piccolo Teatro di Milano. And I learned a great lot about Chekhov from that show. And some most boring Chekhov I saw, let's face it, was done by Russian directors, Russian actors, Russian designers. And so on, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that